se stanką. Patrz, wymieniamy się tutaj. Savo kalboj pasitaisys. 179 milijonai. Aš tada pranešiu, aš pranešimus po tai išsikopinsiu, bet jam dabar, kad ramiai, 179 ir pokytis 5. 79. Ir pokytis 5. Ir dabar biškis struktūros šiek tiek pasikeičia.
Your Excellency, Prime Minister, honorary ministers, dear ladies and gentlemen. The Ukraine Reform Conference is held in Vilnius in these days. In this context, the Lithuanian Confederation of Industrialists is happy to organize the business to government event together with Invest in Ukraine. Lithuanian Confederation of Industrialists dedicates a lot of its activities in Ukraine. It organizes annual business forums with presence of 2 state presidents. Permanent Lithuanian-Ukraine Business Council operates within Lithuanian Confederation of Industrialists. Today is my honor and privilege to welcome Mr. Prime Minister Denis Michal, First Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, Minister of Economy, Mr. Alexei Lubchenko, and other distinguished guests in this meeting of Lithuanian business and government of Ukraine in Vilnius. I would like to emphasize that our countries have much in common, allies in many aspects. And on our economic note, trade and cooperation of our countries shows many good signs and promising future. Statistics says that the result achieved before the pandemic, especially in 2019, were very encouraging. The overall trade between the 2 countries increased as much as 25%. According to the latest data, there are 61 companies with Lithuanian capital operating in Ukraine. In 2020, investments to Ukraine amounted near 180 million euros from Lithuania's side during this year. And it was increased by 18% in comparison with the previous year. There is still room for improvement, not only in the traditional, but also in innovative sectors of the economy. Lithuanian business is particularly interesting to taking future relations with Ukraine. The average growth relations over the 10 years was even increased by 5%. It's a really good figures. Of course, during the pandemic situations, both our trade relations was a little bit disrupted. But we really think that in 2021, our relations will return to the path and growth again. In general, comparing Lithuania's trade relations with other countries and with Ukraine, the growth rates of trade are basically similar. Good state relations and relatively close geographical distance between Lithuania and Ukraine creates perfect conditions for the faster growth of investments and trade relations for our countries. Lithuania is particularly interested in seeing positive changes of business environment in Ukraine for both sides, for local and for foreign businesses. Lithuania has always supported Ukraine's efforts to reform the country and will continue to do so. And we know how it's difficult. This Business to Government Forum, taking place today under the auspice of Ukraine Reform Forum, is dedicated to serve as a platform to highlight the recent reforms in your country and to show improvements in business climate in Ukraine and investment opportunities for the Lithuanian businesses. Today, we look forward to receive fresh information from the highest government officials and have an open and frank discussions after each presentations of our guest speakers. And now I would like to show the movie, and later on I will invite Prime Minister to say his speech.
Україні 30. Вона могутня та красива, мужня та багатогранна, і вона щодня змінюється. Децентралізація, державно-приватне партнерство, трансформація медичної системи, приватизація, реформа пенсійної системи, формування ринку капіталу, діджиталізація, земельна реформа, рух до Green Deal, Ринок енергоносіїв. Євроінтеграція. Реформа державного управління. Євроатлантична інтеграція. Реформи ведуть нас тільки вперед. Україна – це Європа. Європа – це ми.
Very short and impressive, and Her Excellency, Prime Minister, floor is yours. Please.
Шановний пане президенте Конфедерації промисловців Литви Відмантас Янулявічус, шановний пане виконавчий директор Офісу залучення та підтримки
President of the Confederation, the overall strengthening of investment is very important to us. But I would like to welcome all partners, all colleagues, and all friends, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to see you and to speak about investment into Ukraine. This is one of the priorities of our government because we have quite a lot of investment from foreign countries. And this is a case in point that we can be stable and foster and cooperate together. Lithuania is one of the top 10 countries trading with Ukraine. There is some 192 billion US dollars invested from Lithuania into Ukraine. And I believe that the development of partnership between Lithuania and Ukraine will help to increase trade relations. Well, we have really good conditions for that, but we have to talk about reforms that could increase trust and confidence. Well, despite the COVID-19 crisis, the government is still trying to foster and encourage reforms in Ukraine. These are the reforms that help to move forward towards Europe and Euro-Atlantic integration. And also, we try to improve investment climate in Ukraine. We are carrying out reform on business corporations, corporate governance. Also, we are fighting corruption. Well, in the conference, I also spoke that our situation has increased by 3 percentage points, but we also work towards the rule of law. The constitutional reforms are ongoing. We are also working towards improving our legislative basis and harmonizing it with the European Union. Also, we're trying to strengthen the rule of law and strengthening the trust of the society in our judiciary. Ukraine also carried out a lot of reforms in terms of decentralization, police, gas reform, and so on and so forth. As regards the business climate, I think we need to talk about that. In Ukraine, we are putting a lot of effort to improve the decentralization, deregulation processes. We are trying to introduce or establish the deregulation institution next to our government in order to reduce red tape for our companies. We reviewed more than 6,000 legal acts. But this is really hard work. You cannot really feel it at once, but hopefully businesses will feel it in the future. More than 2,000 legal acts were revoked. They're not valid at the moment because these legal acts just were additional administrative burden. 2021 are a year to take stock and look how things are doing. We also made proposals to normalize business environment, and our government is looking into the registration of businesses to make that process easier in order to register companies in a minute. One can do that via mobile application. We tried to register a business in Ukraine, and actually one can do that in 21 seconds. We want to be leaders in this field. As regards other decisions, we are trying to attract companies in demonstrating that it is easy to do business in Ukraine. And in a year, we moved from 112 to 64. But we want to be among top 30 companies where doing business is easy. We want to attract about 150 million USD to attract business climate. President Zelensky adopted a law, so the state investment is encouraged and isn't, and the government would support the investor who would invest more than 20 million USD into Ukraine. So they will. The government will try to make their lives easier, to receive building permits, land buying permits. Mr. Sergei is also one of those who is trying to help us. We have more than 25 investors, and 1.35 billion USD is promised to be invested into Ukraine, which is a progress and which demonstrates how we appreciate business climate and how we react. We try to attract and to encourage businesses from Lithuania to come to Ukraine to develop businesses. And business in Ukraine has good prospects, good future. This is how I'm promoting my state, promoting the opportunities, what we can do and how we can develop this business. So we are trying to work with legislation on industrial parks, regional industrial park network, which is our priority to develop regions. 49 such industrial parks were included into our plan. We are encouraging them to have synergy and not just work in isolation. We are also trying to promote paying culture, also crediting culture. The bad loans dropped from 50 to 40%. We are also talking about establishing financial court in Ukraine. We're also funding corporate reforms in Ukraine. We're trying to reduce little by little the participation of the state directly in the work of the banks. About 3,500 companies, state companies, will most probably be privatized. The state control under them will be abolished. From the 1st of July, our land market started to work. This is a new page in our history. So the state is more efficient, more powerful. Our agricultural sector is very encouraging as well. About 122 contracts in this field, in the land contracting field, have been signed in 6 days. We are also trying to develop agricultural farms, and we are trying to emphasize that land is something where you can invest, which is a resource. We are also trying to implement free trade agreement with the European Union. Ukraine also carried out a lot of good reforms in the field of customs, phytosanitary, also abolishing monopolies. And also in other fields, we're working together with the partners. Ukraine and the European Union have good foundation to work with regard to the association treaty and according to Article 190. And I hope we will renew our agreement in the field of transport, trade, and finances. I do understand the anxiety of our partners from abroad that somebody else can control critical infrastructure, defense infrastructure. But by minimizing these risks with good national system and monitoring, we can assure our partners. In the Parliament, we adopted a law on foreign investment in Ukraine, especially in the plants and objects that are important from the defense and security points of view. So by trying to promote and implement investment into Ukrainian economy, we set out investment projects. 40% of them are big infrastructure projects and transport projects. They encompass all transport areas. We are trying to implement about 17 projects together with other corporations that help to improve the permeability of railway infrastructure, air transport, also waterways should be opened, more opened, and we will try to develop a new waterway system as a new form of business. This is private and public partnership is also one of the ways to attract investment. We talked about that with the Prime Minister of Lithuania. Lithuania has a good experience, and we want to share this experience with you to implement fully public-private partnership. Well, in Kherson and other ports, we also developed concession-based partnership. We're trying to attract investors who are interested in building infrastructure, energy objects. We are also focusing on alternative sources of energy. Ukraine is investing into green energy. Of course, we have certain issues with regard to making compromises on high tariffs, but I think this is a working issue, And I do believe that we can achieve a compromise. Ukraine wants to invest into the already existing systems of energy to accumulate and store energy. In this way, we could balance Ukrainian energy system. We are contributing a lot to the European Green Deal, and our dialogue with the European Union opens new ways for cooperation, for getting financial support. As regards creative industries, Ukraine is very interested in investing into creative industries, into IT, into businesses, into digitalization, also transformations, and so on and so forth, in trying to have this plan. We have a plan, paperless government. People would get electronic services from the state, and there would be no civil servants that would require papers, hard copies, if there is an e-document. So we're trying to move to e-government, e-state. Sometimes, of course, the contact between the business and the citizen is necessary. Information technologies will help to develop startup companies and also trading companies. Of course, this will help to develop and establish an IT hub in the Central and Eastern Europe, and this could help us to invest into jobs and the creation of new technologies. Just to emphasize that we work in different projects in order to encourage public and private partnership. We want to establish the exchange infrastructure. Also, we are sure that in a few years we will have a civilized, the most advanced exchange market, which would help us to diversify the investment in Ukraine. Ukraine is a European state with huge potential, with a very big market, and our government understands that we need to be lean in our business, in our work, to create good business opportunities for the companies. Our key task is to get rid of corruption, red tape, and to make transparent and competitive climate, so we could attract as many investment into our state as possible. Thank you very much. I am ready to work with you. I am very happy with this interactive mode. If you have some questions, I would be happy to answer. I do hope that some of them will be very good to become this guiding principle, so your business finds its way in Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Very impressive speech. And of course, big congratulations in such a big jump in doing business. Yeah, by now I never hear something that would be twice in 1 year. It's huge progress. Dear colleagues, I would like to invite now Mr. Sergei Tsivkach. He is a leader in UkraineInvest, and they are our partners in organizing this forum. Mr. Sergei, please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Mr. Prime Minister Shmyhal, President Yanulevichus of the Confederation of Industrialists, dear ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Sveikinu visus. Thank you for this event, for this opportunity to talk to you today. It's a great honor and privilege to be here today because Lithuania is our strong partner, strong political and economic partner, which is very important. So today I would like to focus my presentation. It's very hard to talk after the Prime Minister because he covered all reforms and it was an excellent presentation of results that Ukraine has achieved. But I will try to focus on specific things that UkraineInvest is doing and what kind of investment menu we have for our partners from Lithuania. So presentation is loaded. First of all, I would like to say a couple of words about macro financial figures in Ukraine. Last year, it's not a surprise, more than 170 countries worldwide faced negative GDP growth. Ukraine was no exclusion, but we did quite well. So according to IMF, our negative GDP growth was supposed to be minus 7.2%. According to World Bank, minus 5.5%, and we did minus 4%, which was very good. Forecast for 2021, according to World Bank, 3%, according to IMF, 4%, according to Ministry of Economy of Ukraine, 4.6%. And we think that it will be closer to 4%. For 2022, World Bank 3.1, IMF 3.4, Ministry of Economy of Ukraine 4.3. International reserves of Ukraine are stable and they were growing within last years. In 2020, the total stock of reserves was 23.8 billion euros. And as of July 2021, 23.7 billion euros in our reserves. International ratings of Ukraine, Fitch B stable, S&P B stable, Moody's B3 stable. Ukraine also has managed to sustain rate of euro, and within this year, even Ukrainian currency was getting stronger. You can see on the right side this dynamic. Key policy rate of National Bank of Ukraine is 7.5%. Now, I would like to move to investments and talk about Lithuanian investments into Ukraine first of all. So FDI stock from Lithuania, as of now, is 172.9 million euros. Majority of this investment comes into trade and real estate sectors of Ukraine. You can see that on the left side of the presentation. Total FDI stock in Ukraine from all countries worldwide in 2020 was 40.6 billion euros, and in first quarter of 2021 is already 44 billion euros. That shows that Ukraine is attracting investments, even though we saw almost zero figures in 2020. According to National Bank of Ukraine, in first quarter of 2021, the positive FDI inflow into Ukraine is already 1.4 billion US dollars. According to our analysis and investments from Lithuania, I would like to focus today on 4 sectors of Ukrainian economy that from our point of view has good potential for cooperation with Lithuanian investors. First of all, I would like to talk about IT sector and R&D. In Ukraine, we have over 200,000 tech specialists. Every year in Ukraine, we have graduates from tech universities in amount of more than 23,000 people. IT sector amounts to 4.9% of total GDP of Ukraine, and the task of Ukraine is to have at least 10% share in Ukrainian GDP that will be created by IT sector. IT services are focused on export, plenty of export, and this is growing all the time. So if we compare only 2019 and 2020, pandemic year, we can see that the growth was about 20%, which is very good because Ukraine is changing according to world standards. Digitalization is key for development of every country worldwide, of every company worldwide. So Ukraine is doing quite well here. Also, we can see a great potential for development here because we have regulatory initiatives such as Dia City. They will have a special regime. It's a virtual economic zone for IT companies, and they will produce special tax rates. For example, distributed profit tax will be at 9%. You can see these figures on the right. Also, Ukraine is already emerging global R&D center and hub, because we have more than 100 global players that already placed R&D facilities in Ukraine. We have companies in Ukraine such as Ericsson, Samsung, Boeing, Siemens, and Oracle. They already have their centers in Ukraine. So it's a very strong potential for cooperation with Lithuanian partners, because you are doing quite well in this area as well. So let's look at this closer during our cooperation. Next sector, automotive. Ukraine is famous for attraction of automotive companies from Europe and from throughout the world. At the moment, we have 22 foreign companies from 6 countries, 38 factories, and more than 500 million investments since 1998. More than 60,000 people are employed in this sector right now. We have such companies as Jabil, Sumitomo and Bordnet, Leoni, Aptiv, Bader, and other companies already working in Ukraine. They produce spare parts for cars like Porsche, BMW, Audi, Lamborghini, and other worldwide brands. Why am I mentioning this sector? Because I know that we have strong cooperation in real estate and development and building and manufacturing facilities. So, for example, we have requests now from automotive companies, and they want to build new plants. And we have a special request from them. They are ready to bring equipment, but they're looking for partners who will build facilities according to their standards. So facility may cost between 15 to 20 million euros, and this international company will be able to sign off-take agreement for at least 10 years. So your investment will be secured and guaranteed. So I encourage you, to get in touch with us, and we will give you all details about this possibility. Also, East Ukraine, a very important part now in automotive business, because labor force is acceptable in east of Ukraine. Is a lot of engineers, a lot of hard-working people situated there. East of Ukraine is safe. A lot of businesses developing there, and already automotive companies, they are looking for placement of manufacturing facilities, Kiev or closer to central and eastern Ukraine. That's the trend that we see now. Next sector of economy is food processing. It was developing quite rapidly as well, and pandemic year was not exclusion as well, due to food security needs, due to supply chains that were changing. So when we look at CapEx in food processing in Ukraine, it was growing. You can see 2018, 0.9 billion, 2019, 1.1 billion, and in 2020, almost 1 billion euros as well. When we look at sales are growing steadily and constantly. 2019, 18.3 billion euros, 2020, 18.6. And which is more important, operating margin is growing as well. So you can see 2018, 4.9%, 2019, 5.1%, and 2020, 5.4%, which is very good. And we have strong international players already present as well, companies like Cargill, Bunge, Nestle, and other producers. Next sector, which is, I think, one of the strategic for you, because we have investors from Lithuania that invest in industrial, logistics, and real estate. I would like to show you some figures. First of all, retail, according to Colliers, increased demand in 2020 resulted in more than 600 new facilities across Ukraine, only in 2020. E-commerce, share of e-commerce in retail sales in Ukraine increased by 45% in 2020 and amounted to 8%. Logistics and distribution. The growth of e-commerce and retail trade stimulated development of logistics and distribution, as well as investing in build-to-suit facilities. And for example, our flagship postal company, Nova Poshta, has invested several such projects in major regions of Ukraine. Now I would like to take you to the left side of the slide, and you will see why this sector is interesting. In Ukraine, for example, the total stock of available retail sector is 1.7 million square meters, compared to Warsaw, more than 6 million, 6.6 million. Prague, 3.3, Vilnius 0.5, and Tallinn 1.6. Vacancy rate at the same time in Ukraine is 2.5%, compared to Warsaw 7.2%, or Vilnius 3.6%. Prime rent in Ukraine 4.5 euros per square meters, compared to 3.8 to 4.7 in Vilnius, for example. And yield at the same time, please pay attention to that, between 13 to 14%, compared to Warsaw only 6%, just over 6%, and Vilnius 7.7. So we have strong potential. Please look at this sector, and we will be, as UkraineInvest, happy to support you here. Also, briefly, I will talk about public-private partnership, because as Prime Minister, always emphasizing that was a big crime, economic crime against Ukraine, that we had no concessions. And finally, in 2020, we have managed to sign our first historic concession. Qatari company Q Terminals has signed concession agreement for total amount of 3.4 billion UA hryvnias. Also, we have signed 2 additional concessions on Kherson port and other resoil facility. Also, in perspective, we have concession for airports, railways, roads, and other concessions for other investment of 1.8 billion euros in capexes. And one more perspective, which we'll be talking today, of course, is the mining exploration in Ukraine and privatization. You will be presented today with detailed information, just a brief teaser for you. So all land plots that are now being planned by State Subsoil Service to be put to auctions, when they will be sold, the total amount of investment can be up to $10 billion. Privatization, we have 3 big targets, 3 big entities that will, SOEs that will be sold this year. First of them is the United Mineral and Chemical Company on 31st of August. And we will be listening to presentations today of heads of the authorities. And the last thing that I wanted to focus on is the law, presidential law on support for investment projects with significant investments, which Prime Minister already mentioned today. I will give you a bit more details about the project. So investor will have to invest at least 20 million euros within 5 years to be qualified to use benefits of state support under this law. Then state support will be in amount of up to 30% of investment made. This support will be in the form of soft incentives, so-called tax exemptions, import duty exemptions, construction of infrastructure facilities, preferred access to land plots. And sectors of economy that are covered by the law are quite vast, which is very good. So we are talking about processing industry, extraction and mining, waste management, transportation, warehousing, logistics, healthcare, R&D, culture and tourism. So a lot of sectors for you to choose from. And there will be an option to sign a special agreement with the government, not an option, but the obligation to sign special agreement. And this agreement will last for up to 15 years. And investor will be able to choose applicable law to that contract, which is a secure, transparent measure. On next slide, you can see applications from investors that already applied to UkraineInvest preliminary, because we are designated by government of Ukraine to support investors under this law. As Prime Minister said, it's over 1.3 billion US dollars. You can see that half of the investments come from Ukraine, because the law is accessible for Ukrainian and foreign investors. And also we have investments from Lithuania already. Main sectors of economy that are of interest to investors right now: agri-processing, logistics, and manufacturing. And I have some good news. We have Lithuanian investor, and I already have managed to meet that investor in Vilnius today. We have agreed on a procedure to support this project. It will be a project in Kharkiv, which is in the east of Ukraine. The amount of investment will be up to 30 million euros, and we agreed that we will provide full support to that investment projects, and maybe we will have that project signed as one of the first projects that will fall under definition of that law. So then we also agreed with President of the Confederation that as soon as we have that project on track, we are coming again to Vilnius, and we are presenting this case to all Lithuanian business society. On this note, I would like to thank once again to all co-organizers, to Confederation, to Prime Minister, also to Lena Kasharny for support, for Ukrainian Embassy, for Ministry of Foreign Affairs of both countries, and most importantly, to businessmen of Lithuania that operate in Ukraine, that doing their business in Ukraine and promoting our country as attractive investment destination. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was really impressive and nice to see the future of Ukraine. And dear ladies and gentlemen, we have very huge possibility and opportunity who are inside the merchants and who are looking us online to ask questions directly to the Prime Minister. And during your preparation, I will ask just one question or maybe more. It depends on your activity. We'll ask the Prime Minister one question. During your presentation, we hear that you're already opening a lot of places for free economic zones. And what do you think when this process will start? Because of course then the rules and requirements for free economic zones, they are mostly the same, and I think they will be committed with the European Union law. Because I think a lot of new businesses who is here today would like to open the new branches. And what is your time schedule during these free economic zones, and which regions you think will be most attractive or supported by the government? Thank you.
Отже, стосовно таких пріоритетних територій розвитку зараз
As regards the development of such priority areas of free economic zones, we see a few options. The territory itself belongs to the state. We adopted legislation for that. And as regards the implementation of such legislation to the investors who invest more than 20 million USD, those investors who invest that amount of money, they would have benefits and privileges. And this is enshrined in the law. And we adopted a number of secondary legislation to ease life for them. We are trying to cooperate with the Ministry of Temporary Occupied Territories, so we could stimulate investment invest into Lugansk and Donetsk territories. As we are all closer to the administrative border with the Crimea. And from the territorial point of view, this is important to us. We want to attract investors there. We want to focus everybody's attention to those areas. We want to also update regulatory systems in southern Ukraine. We want to work on agri-food and industrial sector. We will not only encourage the investment and import, but also processing business in Ukraine. We have a number of pieces of legislation to enable this. The city project, the one that I mentioned, which is an online platform to develop investments without physical participation. You can invest online. This is a very exclusive product, very interesting for IT business and for businesses that work together with IT. If I got your question correctly, our priority areas are clear, but any area is interesting to us. Car manufacturing, the airspace, school, Space Technology School. We have signed a number of contracts. We're developing this area, working together with the USA in the field of airspace. And once I speak about that, the manufacturing of aircrafts, food sector is very potential and very prospective. We have good reserves as regard critical minerals, lithium, titanium, and cobalt. Ukraine is very interesting from that point of view. Ukraine cooperates together with the European Alliance and with regard to critical mineral resources. As regards batteries, lithium batteries, which is considered to be a hazardous, critical material. So we are expecting investors to Ukraine that would bring new technologies, storages for batteries, also alternative energy, and also technologies that produce hydrogen. This is a very prospective area. And there we will speak with about such critical materials. And Shestovich said that the need of hydrogen and lithium will skyrocket by 60 times up to 2050 or 60. So this is a huge potential. So we encourage to invest into this field as well. And we are looking forward for investors in any areas that would bring know-how, IT, and so on and so forth. We will help as much as we can.
It was really very correct answer, and even more, I hear really the interesting news regarding the batteries and regarding the alliance with Mr. Maroshevsovich. We discussed just a few weeks ago about the battery alliance, which is created inside the Europe under the Business Europe, and it's really good perspectives, because in these cases you could create really full integrated added value inside your country. And of course, if we less use the third countries to use some energy things, the more independence you are and the more added value you can create in vertical scale. Thank you very much. And maybe we have the questions from audience who would like to ask. Okay, we have two questions. I think colleague was the first who just want to ask, no? Or it was just the remarks? No. Please, floor is yours.
I'm Aivaras Karalius, director of BT Invest Group. Prime Minister, the Honorable President of Lithuanian Confederation of Industrialists, I don't have a question, just a comment, to be more precise. As our group has been investing into Ukraine for more than 25 years, we have invested about $500 million into this market, and we can, in this forum, and have a right to say that we trust in Ukraine. We believe in this state. We believe in its present and its future. And we invest tens of millions of euros. We are really impressed that some 5 years ago, the state chose a clear path for development, which is based on European values, also market economy, the rule of law, adherence to international treaties. And the reforms that that were launched are not easy. But their results are needed as air for us to breathe, for you to breathe as well and for our partners. It is clear that such reforms are not easy. They give rise to certain political, economic pressures. They also could create real difficulties for the businessmen who are working on those markets. But from our practical work, we feel that tax administration has improved. And if we speak about the value-added tax, it became really transparent and clear. If we had chaotic checks on companies, chaotic audits, now they have become planned and understandable. We see a clear improvement in receiving permits, their construction permits, also the finalization of permits and buildings. So there are lots of improvements in Ukraine, and I think that your efforts that you talked about, Prime Minister, are really bringing fruit. And since the format of this forum is business to government, I want to tell you about a very specific case or example where our company is carrying out a project in Kiev. Our daughter company, Stolica Group, together with a state company, Przewodnica, for more than 10 years are developing successfully a residential house building project. We have built 36 residential buildings on the basis of investment contracts. We've invested 1.5 billion hryvnias into infrastructure. We built kindergartens, roads, electricity power plant, and the state received more than 31,000 square meters in terms of residential area. We had a challenge in this project. State company became accountable to the state fund. Of course, there were certain disruptions, but we see very positive, very quick reaction from the institutions, governmental institutions. We are cooperating very actively, and as a consequence, the transfer to people of more than 1,500 apartments was stopped. But I do hope that we will find a solution because we're transparent in our negotiations. We will develop the project. We hopefully will bring more benefit to the state and the residents of Kiev. And just to conclude, we feel and we hope that the words of your president that he's looking forward to Lithuanian investment in Ukraine is a reality. We see it. We do hope that Ukrainian efforts of reforms will bring fruit and you will be accepted to the European family, and we will be even ever closer colleagues. So this was not a question, this was my comment.
You will answer a little bit, yeah. Thank you.
Але я відповім. В першу чергу дякую за дійсно ваші інвестиції.
Thank you very much for the investments, for the created jobs, for taxes paid, for your entire contribution to the economy, to Kiev. I do know about your project, about the problems that you're facing, and we will really support you because this is one of the projects that was exemplary. Just to assure you that the construction business that you are investing is difficult. But one of the working groups in our Rada supported the amendments in the construction legislation. We do hope that this law will be adopted, and during the summer we will work together with this working working committee from the European Parliament to put criminal liability on civil servants who fail to register building permits or who do that on purpose. And I do hope that we will adopt such pieces of legislation, and you will see a completely different work and pace in the construction sector. I did work in the development area, and I do understand your problems and the fear of investments that investors. We do know how to rectify these things, and I do hope that you will feel that in the near future. Also, e-forms, e-accounting should be introduced. At the moment, business is very positive about such things and the system, tax system. Of course, we would like to see these developments in the customs and other areas, so businesses have constructive dialogue. This is my area of work as a businessman, as a manager who used to manage a company. I do understand these things, these problems. Thank you for this positive comment. I do understand that you, as a major investment, need support, but we will work together, and Sergei knows your ideas as well.
From the faces, but the answer was very positive. Thank you very much once more. Do we have more questions from audience? Yes, Mr. Naudužas, former ambassador, please.
Dear Prime Minister Shmyhal, dear President of Confederation of Industrialists, Mr. Yanulevichus, Szanowne Państwo, transport has changed our Europe dramatically. It has become much better connected and more comfortable. Transport delivered in economic crisis and drive out economic crisis. Transport is the best key from access to success. We had excellent example of cooperation between Ukraine and Lithuania in transport domain. The name was Viking Shuttle Container Train. It was a success story between Ukraine, Belarus, and Lithuania. By the way, you had as well also good example with Latvians, and the project was called Zubr. Maybe you have some other in your mind, let's say some other projects could be developed, for example, for improving connectivity on air flights between Lithuanian airports and Ukrainian airports, or not only on railways, maybe between seaports, and especially on road carriers as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Це якраз питання, яке вмістить в собі геополітику і
Well, this is a geopolitical issue that has international and geopolitical aspects. As I've already said, we adopted a law on internal transport. This is the answer that not only road carriers, but also waterways can be improved. This is a very encouraging and perspective area. We can look for common interests, common projects, and exchange our good practice. We see also potential ports where we can develop transit. I'm talking about such dry ports, and Mr. Sergei also mentioned the concession agreements between the seaports. We're also interested in developing river ports. There are certain companies that have experience in that. As regards logistics between our countries, the turnover of goods back in 2019 was 1.5 billion USD. In the year 2020, during lockdown, in the third and fourth quarter, the turnover was 1.3 billion USD. So despite all the restrictions and the pandemics, more than twice the trade dropped in other countries, and we have stable connections. Really are doing their best. As regards logistics, logistics between the Baltic states and the Black Sea is also improving. I can't tell you about specific projects, but I do hope that the state will really support the cooperation with the logistics sector, and we will support it very much. Thank you.
Once more. Yes, please.
Mateusz Domian, Orlen Lietuva company. Dear Mr. Prime Minister, President of Confederation, and Mr. Director of UkraineInvest, Orlen Lietuva is the company which is the third player on the Ukrainian market of motor fuels. We are covering, in 2020, we covered 7% of Ukrainian motor fuel market. We work with Ukraine many years, and this cooperation works very well. I also wanted to thank to the head of UkraineInvest for help, because we are working on the issue in Ukraine, one issue in Ukraine. We understand as Orlen Lietuva that Ukraine is dependent on the import of motor fuels from different countries. I wanted to mention that that Orlen Lietuva is the only one European producer from European Union that deliver fuels to Ukraine. Our clients, Ukrainian clients, also all the time mention that our fuels, our volumes, are coming to Ukraine without any delays. So this is our let's say main factor that help us to sell to Ukraine. We understand this dependence of Ukraine. We also see the difficult situation in Belarus, which is important because our fuels from Mazhikai are going to Ukraine through Belarusian territory. So what I wanted to say, it's not a question, I think it's an idea to discuss it later, that our countries, Lithuania and Ukraine, are in a good position to start to talk, maybe to set up a working group to discuss about some promotion of European producers of fuels, like Orlen Lietuva, to promote those fuels in Ukraine, which would help us to improve the business and the same time to help Ukraine to be more independent from those countries which are not the with which relations Ukrainian relations are not as good as those relations are good with Lithuania. So thank you.
Sure, quite long question, but could you answer?
Ну, я дійсно більше це сприймаю як пораду. Знову ж таки, почну зі слів вдячності за
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful.
в Україні. Дійсно, я чув
I'm very grateful for this. I've heard about your company and really good feedback. Thank you very much for your standards for creating jobs in Ukraine. As regards the idea to diversify businesses, also I think your ideas are really good, and you work together with Sergey, UkraineInvest, and you have really praised this organization and the head. So please continue this cooperation, and we'll do our best to improve the turnover from Lithuania to Ukraine and back and forth. And our goods could be proposed to the Lithuanian business. We have good manufacturing, good business. We need to make good balance, to have good interest. We are in a very good position as regards our overall economic plan. But this does not mean that we have certain ambitions to do something else.
Much. Thank you for audience, and I would like to take the floor my colleague, Mr. Zivkac now, and I will let Prime Minister, because it's a lot of meetings, I know, it's very busy schedule. Thank you for everybody.
Is it working? It's working. So we will continue our events right now, and I would like to welcome Lena Kosharny to the stage, to the podium. And I would like to thank you again to all co-organizers. And now I will ask, I thank you again, but specifically, because thank you very much for Western NIS for working with us, for our cooperation. And now we want to show you a real result of our cooperation, a small one, but practical. And it's very important for Ukraine. So can we please see our video that was jointly created by Western NIS and UkraineInvest and presidential and prime ministerial team. Thank you very much. So can we present the video now, please? feel like I went back to my lovely country and came back in 2 minutes, and I have seen all reforms that were happening. So
We have to wake everyone up after lunch with the music and
absolutely.
energize.
So investments, doing business in Ukraine. Government has a very important role. Government needs to improve business conditions, climate, investment climate, environment, and also make sure that investors and businesses feel safely, operate comfortably, making profits, feeling happy, and inviting other investors. And that last point is very important, because when investors come to Ukraine and come to UkraineInvest, they always ask about regulatory policy, things that can be done, cannot be done according to the law. But then there is the final and the most important step. They go to local businesses and to businesses from abroad that already operate in Ukraine. And then they ask them, what can you say about doing business in Ukraine? And it's very important. So I have that question to you, Lena. What can you say about Ukraine? You are, that famous Ukrainian entrepreneur, international entrepreneur. You did a lot for development of regulatory policy, a lot of support. And you invest in a lot of businesses throughout Ukraine. So what about Ukraine? How about doing business in Ukraine?
Thank you very much, Sidhi. It's a pleasure today to be with everyone here in Lithuania. By the way, I have a bit of a personal connection. I've been to Vilnius 10 times. My husband, my in-laws are from Chicago, Lithuanian background. Andris Nemitskas is my husband's name, so we very much love the country and come every single year. So I'm Canadian. I've lived in Ukraine for 27 years. Before, Sidhi, I answer your question, I do want to set a bit of a context, because I think it's important to set the context. So I'm sure that people here remember Baltic American Enterprise Fund. We also had in Ukraine Western NIS Enterprise Fund. So folks know that there were 10 enterprise funds, $22 billion among these funds. And we had the good fortune to be managing this fund since 1994. And then in 2005, we spun out and we formed Horizon Capital. We went on to raise 4 additional funds. At this point, we've raised, actually as of last month, another $1 billion beyond the original 150. And we've put most of it to work in Ukraine. So over 800 million in Ukraine, 150 companies employing 57,000 people. We've seen it all since 1994. And what I can say, Sidhi, is truly the last 5 years has been tremendous. And for anyone who hasn't been to Ukraine, please just take a ticket, go to Ukraine. You have folks like Sidhi, the whole team at UkraineInvest, that didn't exist when we started investing, that really can work with you from beginning to end. I'm also chair of the American Chamber of Commerce in Ukraine with investors who've invested $50 billion. And over the years, yes, there have been trials, yes, there have been tribulations, but what we've seen now is this strong commitment to attracting foreign direct investment, to really looking at the issues that exist and addressing them, and really having this dialogue between business, government, this public policy dialogue in terms of what's required to move things forward. From our standpoint, what is very attractive to us is first and foremost is bringing global investors together. So typically we will raise funds from US and European institutional investors, some of the top pension funds, endowments, et cetera, and then we'll invest them alongside visionary entrepreneurs. So for us, what's critical is this new generation of entrepreneurs, is the rise of, IT, tech. I mean, in 2003, it was a $110 million industry. It's a $5 billion industry now. It is unrecognizable what it was 10 years ago and what it is today. You saw the logos that Sidhi, the UkraineInvest team put together, the R&D centers, the IT outsourcing, the product platforms. So for us, if before we invested in a primarily maybe domestic profile, we've now diversified. Now it's export-oriented, IT, light manufacturing, food and agro, and then also e-commerce. E-commerce is fantastic. And we're seeing many e-commerce companies from Ukraine that are entering Poland, Makeup is a Ukrainian company, it's in 14 European countries. Leaky24 just entered Poland. So we're seeing this real growth from Ukraine into major markets. Ajax, which was in the video, 93 countries, made in Ukraine, 100% assembled and made in Ukraine and sold to 93 countries. So it's, for us, we feel very comfortable. We believe the business community is united, and we have partners like UkraineInvest and the government of Ukraine and throughout who are extremely interested in attracting foreign direct investment.
Thank you very much, Lena. I have a couple of questions, and Mr. President, maybe you will have a couple of questions as well, and the audience. Well, as you said, you current investor, you invested a lot for up to $1 billion, more than $800 million already invested. And when you meet people, it's always interesting to see something behind the curtain. So because you have set up already several fund facilities, so do you have any plans for Ukraine? What would be the next one? And so can you give some heads up to the audience online and offline?
I'd love to share my experience with our last fundraise. So when we raised our $200 million fund in 2017, it wasn't easy. I mean, 2017, you can imagine the economic numbers and the issue and the conflict in eastern Ukraine, how difficult that was. I went to 30 countries, 300 investors. We raised the $200 million. First 6 months of this year, in 100 days, we raised $260 million. Ukraine is on the map for investors. They do, really the tech and digital transformation is attracting a group of investors that really have not considered Ukraine in the past. And that has a long tail for logistics infrastructure, for data centers, for telecom, for fiber. It's quite interesting. So our plans, now we're at 1.1 billion. Our plans is to do a new fundraise that starts in September, so another 250 to 300 million. And that's our range. We like to keep our funds 200 to 300 and to put them to work. And I can't say anything negative about the experience that we have. I really can't.
Thank you. And in relation to those 4 sectors of economy that I have mentioned as probably from our point of view they have the most potential for cooperation with Lithuanian investors. Do you agree with that, or you would add any additional sectors?
Yeah, it was interesting because Sidhi, I haven't seen your latest presentation, and I looked at it, and it looked like a page that I had just shown 3 months ago to our investors, because there is this secular trend. IT and tech is, of course, in your presentation. That's very big for us. Ukraine, it's not only 200,000 programmers and growing, but it's also the global reach, the desire to be regional and global champions. So that, of course, is very important to us. As I mentioned, e-commerce, pharmaceuticals, we invested in pharma. We sold a company to Stada, which is a global, over 3 billion euros in revenues. For us, it's high growth, we cannot depend, and we don't like to play with multiples, and we just like to see a founder who's visionary, who's determined, who needs growth equity and expertise together with us. And we align on whether in a number of years we will sell back to them our shares, or if we do an IPO together, or if we're selling to strategic. So it really to us is about partnership, about vision, and high growth. Right now in our portfolio, despite coronavirus, despite COVID, we have 4 companies in our latest fund that are growing over 100% a year. Their top line is growing in the last 3 years. And that's pretty amazing. You really don't see that everywhere.
Thank you. I have so many questions to you, but I need to be polite as a co-host and to ask Mr. President or the audience
Yes,
about questions.
if I can, yes. It was really interesting. How I understand you came on the market in 2017. How long take for you to make this decision, and how long was due diligences and, let's say, preparation from the government side to invest in Ukraine? How long it will take for you?
Yeah, we came on the market, we actually launched our company in 2005. So in 2005, and we very quickly raised 2 funds, almost $500 million, and that was pre-2008. And then the next fund we raised was 2017. It took that long to put funds to work, but also you had the financial crisis, you had the 2013-14. So for us, it was very much a renewal of whether we continue to focus on Ukraine or whether we focus elsewhere. And we made that decision in 2017 in not easy times. But again, it was based on the new generation, on the IT, on the tech, on the vision, and the people. Because for us, growth equity, we're investing alongside an entrepreneur. We don't take majority stakes. We are not controlling a company. We need to build that trusting relationship with a partner that we want to back and we want to build a business together with.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
Maybe you have questions?
I have another one then. According to Prime Minister of Ukraine, there was another serious economic crime against the country, undeveloped capital markets system in Ukraine. And I know that recently government of Ukraine did a lot of effort to improve that, and government of Ukraine has signed a memorandum of cooperation with EBRD, American Chamber of Commerce, other international partners, in order to develop this market within next 3 years, which will be called NEXT. There will be capital markets and commodities markets as well. And you, as the chair of the board of American Chamber of Commerce as well, you have this role as well. Could you please tell us, how do you see this process developing? Can you give some heads up as well to the audience and explain how this will be implemented in real life from business perspective, what kind of perspectives for investors there are?
Thank you, Sidhi. This is a project that's very near and dear to my heart. I mentioned that I've been in Ukraine for 27 years. I have spoken to every prime minister of Ukraine about this project. And Prime Minister Shmyhal was the first prime minister who truly understood how important it is that Ukraine is essentially an unclassified frontier market, a country that is, from a capital markets perspective, at the same level as Togo and Burkina Faso and Pakistan and other countries. And I don't think that Ukraine should be there. I think that Ukraine is a European country that needs to have strong capital, commodity, energy markets. So Prime Minister Shmyhal agreed with American Chamber of Commerce. He was very excited and truly understood the ramifications of everything from pension systems to pension funds. In fact, we cooperate very closely with Invalda, which is one of our partners in an investment in the largest bank in Moldova, a Lithuanian fund manager. So we decided to put a consortium together, EBRD, USAID, and American Chamber of Commerce, to work alongside the government of Ukraine. We've signed a memorandum, and to develop, as Sidhi mentioned, Next UA, which will be organized capital, commodity, and energy markets in one vehicle. It's very interesting. It's revolutionary. It's not all separate like we've seen in other markets. We're learning from others and bringing it together and really leveraging Ukraine's strength in IT, in agriculture, in commodities, and capturing that value inside the country. So it's a very ambitious project. It requires significant donor funding. That is why we put the consortium together. USAID is buying the trading infrastructure. EBRD will be the investment partner into the holdco. They have invested in every stock exchange in the region. I mean, for us, this is the beginning. I know that here in Vilnius, here you have the NASDAQ Baltic Exchange, your leapfrog ahead, and we would love to collaborate as well with those who do have experience with the stock exchanges, do reach out, because I think we'll see in 3 years that, that Ukraine will be very far ahead from the standpoint with the group that we have and the mobilization of the government's efforts alongside that of the private sector and donors. So it's going to be very exciting. It's called Next UA. Now there's a feasibility study underway. Equipment is being bought, software is being bought, and let's see. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but it will be exciting in the next 2 to 3 years.
Thank you. One more additional question to that. Looking at Polish experience, they have started establishment of capital market system in Poland about 20 years ago with setting up Warsaw Stock Exchange. And one of the key things that positively affected development and enabled rapid development of Warsaw Stock Exchange was combination of development of capital markets and privatization. Because several big size Polish SOEs were put to stock exchange, and they were privatized through different systems, through shares. What do you think about this system? Do you think that this could be a ticket for Ukraine as well, both for development of privatization and capital markets? What's your view of professional on this?
Yeah, I see Mr. Sinichenko too here from the State Property Fund, and who is the lead on the privatization. I think that the rise of the capital markets and privatization, it goes hand in hand, because the state has assets that obviously they wish to monetize, and they wish to attract additional foreign direct investment, whether through a full privatization, or it could be listing a portion of a large state asset. Obviously there's a road to travel, there's corporate governance, there's work to be done. But my prediction, and what we see also within the private sector, is that we will see within the next few years 3 to 5 IPOs of strong Ukrainian companies on international markets, and ultimately that will catalyze more attention into Ukrainian companies, which really will give additional impetus and interest in capital markets. One of our mentors and one of the fund managers that we look up to as enterprise investors in Poland, 80 IPOs. I've known those guys for 25 years, and seeing where they came from and where they are today, I mean, all of that is possible, and you have to start somewhere. So from our perspective, we look at Warsaw, we look at the Allegro IPO, $20 billion IPO, Kaspi, now worth $18 billion, a Kazakh company in London. I mean, there are multiple similar sized Ukraine assets that we will see come out of the gate in the next few years, and I think that's going to be very exciting to watch. And in the meantime, while they go public internationally, then we'll start developing the domestic market. At the end of the day, it's important for every Ukrainian to be able to invest in their champions. And we look forward to helping together with the government to make that happen.
Thank you. Maybe anyone has any questions to Lena, please. Could you please give the microphone?
Dear Lena, it's a pleasure, not measure, but treasure to listen to you about your company and about how you developed your Horizon Capital. And congratulations on very simple matter. Congratulations that Ukraine is on a map, as you just told, not on a gap for investments from foreign countries. Just one very short question. What should be done by Ukraine, by European Union, in order to strengthen ties between Ukraine and European Union, including Lithuania, developing capital markets? Shortly, your opinion. Thank you.
The relationship between the EU and Ukraine has never been stronger. Of course, EU is Ukraine's main trading partner. Because we all understand, of course, that Ukraine did not get the EU roadmap or the infrastructure investments in the different regions, and it's taken Ukraine longer to develop. Now that we do have this association agreement, now that EU is Ukraine's #1 trading partner, now we have these relationships cemented, then really through the various government to government, but also private sector to private sector, that's one of the reasons I'm here today, is to really let people know what we're doing and see if there's opportunities to collaborate. On the capital markets, EBRD is our partner. EBRD is our partner on the capital markets. We are also advising the EU Commission and EIB as well. And I do think that once we finish the feasibility study and it's very clear what the roadmap is, we will engage players from the EU closer into the capital markets development. I think there's a lot of opportunities there. And I urge people to do reach out to UkraineInvest, to me, because we are going to need significant expertise, know-how from European countries in terms of getting these markets going. And I think it's an amazing opportunity for many. You know, it isn't every day that a new capital market that will be a triple play, capital, commodity, and energy, has these kinds of financial donors behind it. The private sector, City Ukraine is involved. So let's see, and then 3 years from now, we'll say, in Vilnius, we talked about it when it was just a piece of paper, and 3 years from now, who knows, we may have Lithuanian pension funds investing in next UA.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our conference is moving on as a Swiss watch, 15:20 now. We have 10 minutes break, coffee break now. Let's continue our discussion inside the next room to another, and in 10 minutes we are coming back here again. Will be session number 2, panel number 2. And we will have Mr. Dmitro Semnichenko. Online we will have Mr. Alexander Tkachenko and Roman Opimach. And we will discuss about very serious things. Online will be just Minister of Culture Information of Policy of Ukraine and subsoil survey in Ukraine online. And physically we will have Dmitry Semnichenko, Head of State Property Fund of Ukraine. Colleagues, see you in 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, dear colleagues, our break takes a little bit more time. It's very nice to discuss with everybody and to create the relations. I hope we will have, not hope, but I know we will have some more time from 5 till 6 o'clock, till some dinner, and you can really use the premises for future discussions and to create the new context. Now we would like to continue our panel number 2. And we will try to cooperate together with Sergei, this panel. And the first, our speaker, will be Mr. Dmytro Senichenko, Head of State Property Fund of Ukraine. He's in the middle, and we just during the break, we discussed it's a lot of new opportunities coming to invest in Ukraine especially. The biggest objects, privatization objects, are coming on the market, and I think it's a really good time to ask about the possibilities and about the future steps. Mr. Dmytro, floor is yours. I think maybe you will have the presentation? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me the floor. I will give you a small presentation, but I believe that bilateral mutual discussions between government and business are the most important. That's why I'll be ready to stay here to speak separately. First of all, really thank you. Glad to be here. It's my second visit to Vilnius since 1991. And I do remember these days. And these newspapers, people on the street, I brought them back to Kiev. I showed to parents. I said, you see what's going on? People are fighting for their future. They're doing this actively. So that's why today we see that Lithuania already joined the big family of European Union, going through the difficult times. Also, we can say that we can learn some good steps and also some mistakes in privatization, which was also a voucher case and not always transparent in Ukraine and maybe in some other countries. But we are moving, and we are moving together. Very high level of yesterday and today conference shows that we are really trying to keep each other hand by hand, helping each other move with the support of other developed countries and the international community. Me, at the position of Chairman of State Property Fund, I am realizing the policy. It's very important that the President, the Parliament, and the government do have clear vision and clear policy with regard to the state-owned enterprises and other state-owned assets, because this year, as you know, Ukraine will be celebrating its 30th university, and in different period of time, this vision has been changed many times dramatically. So today, we are all united. President issued decree that and even transferred Hotel Dnieper from his management to privatization. Prime Minister is actively supporting. Parliament voted the law that canceled the ban for privatization of more than 1,400 state-owned enterprises. We, at the State Property Fund, we changed the process and the procedure to make it more understandable, predictable, because what the business want and he needs predictability, rules, clear legislation. I'm not talking about the laws, I'm not talking about judicial system which need to be improved in Ukraine, you all know, but still business is always looking for risk-reward ratio. If you can invest and have high return but with high risks, let's consider it part of investment. Still, Ukraine is a risky country, I may say this, but we are changing legislation, we are fighting by pressure of people to the politicians to establish the rules. Some people walked along the desert 40 years to build the country. We are still 30, but it's still too long. So let's do it faster, and let me share with you my presentation. I have a clicker here. What is it about? This is a structure how the decisions are made in Ukraine president, parliament, government, and Ukraine still has more than 3,600 state-owned enterprises, which are managed by 96 ministries, state agencies, and state services. That's why the hot topic of today's conference today is the corporate governance, and the state should decide which companies are really strategic, have to stay with the government, which companies should be transferred for the privatization, and we are facilitating and helping with this decision, but as you can see, we are State Property Fund of Ukraine, we are execution of political will. So we need sustainable political will of transfer enterprises, and we are doing this investment menu for the investors, because we are trying to change our institution, being more client-oriented. We have even investor relations manager that you can call, email, we can answer any questions. Everybody thinking, not everybody, sorry, the broader public is thinking that privatization is about getting revenues to the state budget from selling the assets. I'm saying that it's not like this. The privatization is about get rid in transparent way from non-core assets. And second, the most important is the fight with corruption. Because the key problem in Ukraine, as you may heard, unfortunately, is the corruption. That's why less source for corruption, less state-owned enterprises, that's why Ukraine is turning around in this political cycle of political corruption. When you have elections to the parliament, then you have appointed directors of state-owned enterprises, getting some money, financing election campaigning. And it's like 30 years in a row. We have to eliminate the source of corruption, also one of the important political tasks for the privatization. This regard to this, many do measure our activity as the revenues from the privatization. In the year 2020, we managed to exceed revenues from previous years 5 times, year 2018 10 times. This year we hope to reach the highest possible results with the big privatization. What we did in the State Property Fund, we changed the process itself. So instead of the newspaper, where it was printed what will be sold and when, and you can understand, disclosure was very poor of these assets. So we introduced a fully transparent process, online site, privatization.gov.ua, where you can download in the virtual data room teasers, access to the object, physical, so practically you can online check what will be sold and when, and even go with the in-depth due diligence with your advisors. Results are on the table, on the screen. We managed in this difficult coronavirus period, so black color is 2019, yellow color 2020. Somebody said it's difficult, they are not coming, they are not buying. We organized more than 2,000 auctions in the new procedures, in Prozoro sale, electronic, with full disclosure, and you see the price grows 199. We are not saying that we have to sell as much as higher price. We have to sell it in a transparent way, and the price will be formulated on the market. The average number of participants doubled, and it's not the problem when we have 20, 30 bidders to one side, to one asset. So this is the process. In Ukrainian legislation, we have a differentiation between so-called small privatization and big privatization. Small privatization, these are assets with the balance sheet price less than 10 million euro, 250 million hryvnias. Everything that exceeds balance sheet price 10 million euro, it goes with slightly different procedure. If small privatization is disclosure, virtual data room, online electronic auction, big privatization, we are hiring privatization advisors who are reputable investment banks, Big Four auditors, to do the in-depth due diligence, technical, financial, tax, whatever necessary, then to help us to create probably, if necessary, structuring program, maybe some post-privatization conditions and starting price. Then the government is approving this, and then there is an auction. So it takes roughly about 9 months to prepare one, like to give a birth, like a new child, if there is no courts decisions in the moment. So it takes about 9 months to prepare an asset for the transparent privatization. The first auction of big privatization will be 31st of August this year, and then several in a row in autumn, and hopefully next year as well we will continue. So what we have in the investment menu for small privatization, these are different assets. Honestly saying, most of them are distressed assets with some problems, with some debts, but also for the investors in the emerging markets, it's an opportunity. So knowing the strategy, you can buy the building. Of course, the land could be taken under the building, and so on and so forth. So I would request that we work very closely with UkraineInvest. We have our investor relations manager, so we will be ready to provide any information possible additional to one we have on the website, but at the website we have explicit information. So these are the cases. One of the cases is Hotel Dnieper, which was in the downtown in Kiev, with starting price 81 million hryvnia and final price 1.1 billion hryvnia. Also, we are selling set of distilleries. The new law was adopted, demonopolization of distilleries and spirit production, which also fight of corruption. At the same time, there are 78 distilleries around Ukraine. Not all of them should be the distilleries production. It's a brownfields that one can use for grain processing, agricultural processing, because there are electricity facility, railway, road, etc., etc. This year we will privatize. So it is not the concession, it's a privatization, but small 2 ports, one in Belgorod-Dnestrovsk and Ust-Dunaysk seaport. Also a separate program we are realizing with the Ministry of Justice. We are selling jails without prisoners. These are the closed jails. And part of the money are directed to the increasing of comfort in the existing jails and build the new ones out of central parts of the town. The one which was sold 2 weeks ago was acquired by IT company in Lviv, and instead of the old distressed brownfield territory, there will be IT campus with all necessary development, hotels and whatever they will design there. Kiev Pass Service, so it's very important to show to the public and to the politicians that these assets are getting the new lives, because again, we need owner who will invest. It doesn't matter how much he will buy. We are trying to give full comfort to the buyers in terms of knowledge or information, what happened with this asset before, if there are court cases, what are the debts, etc. So these are, for the investment decisions, it's very important to have explicit information. So this is what we are providing in the State Property Fund. So large-scale privatization is, it's a cases that we are showing before and after. One have bought the old factory who produced Soviet-type TV sets, and instead of this, there is a new electro car charger. Okay, that's a very visible, the new modern competitive production instead of old Soviet non-competitive. Unfinished construction. So it's like, I repeat, 2,000 auctions we have conducted during the previous year to find the investors. So fight corruption, attract investment, transform non-performing assets into working, and boost the economy. The first large privatization will be happening, as I said, 1st of August. Now it's already, we have a privatization advisor, BDO, Corporate Finance, Baker, McKinsey, and Baker Tilly. Says 100% state-owned company specializes on development titanium and zircon deposits and production on rutile, ilmenite, and zircon. This is blue chips enterprise, absolutely. They will be starting price around $150 million US. 90% of company products are exported, and it's exported for hard currency, as you can imagine. What is important to give a kind of comfort for new potential investor that the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, he issued a letter of intention. So if the new buyer will be the buyer who will comply with the standards of European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, they may become the financing partner for this asset. This will give to the new investor better standing in the emerging market, I would say. The next privatizations will be, unfortunately, the not working facilities of production in the downtown of Kiev. That is Bolshevik plant, which is 33 hectares in the center of Kiev. I believe the best site for development. Hotel President. Now we are preselecting advisors for the electricity distribution companies because there are left 6 state-owned electricity distribution companies, so we are going to sell them next year. Joins the company Centrenergo. We are finalizing the concept, whether this will be together with some selected coal mines or not coal mines. Difficult question. It was not easy to get control over the company, to get control over the state-owned company by the state. And Odessa Port Fertilized Plant, we conducted 3 out of 5 stages of preparation. We won $300 million court in highest Supreme Court of Ukraine against the previous creditor, let's say. That's why my speech dedicated to Ukraine in Davos was called "Ukraine is a powerhouse of Europe." Elena Kasharna may remember. So I truly believe in this because we have to, we have everything, like people, natural resources, geopolitical situation, association with the European Union. We have to realize it finally for the benefits of Ukrainian people, our partners, for the future benefits of all our countries. Thank you very much for your attention. I will stay here and after and be ready to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dmitro. Do we have the questions? Because I think it must be some questions. So many good examples of the nice privatization. And as our forum in general, you know, regarding the investments and reforms in Ukraine, maybe somebody has the questions. Later on, we will share these presentations and the contacts of our colleagues to have the direct access.
Yes, and we work together with UkraineInvest. We have this website, privatization.gov.ua. We have investor relations manager. The most important is our task is to get the sustainable political will. This is now the very important, and the business may help, saying as if you open and prepare your investment menu, we are ready to invest. Where is your investment menu?
I have one short question then to Mr. Sinichenko. You're doing a great job, and we have seen those figures, you know, they're rising year by year. And I know that you also were an initiator of a comprehensive legal reform that will enable to transfer SOEs for easier process of privatization as well. It's a big reform. It's currently under review in the Parliament of Ukraine. Could you give some information about this reform and what is envisaged and why it will be more effective to sell SOEs in Ukraine?
Again, yes, we developed, so it's already second year of mine on the position of State Property Fund and third, unfortunately, Minister of Economy during this period of time. That's why the policy is very important. we should be the office that realizes policy, but we are also helping to formulate it. That's why we've written a draft law. We have written the draft Cabinet of Ministers, and we are pushing them through. This is the complex law, which is already submitted to the Parliament, registered, and we expect him to be approved hopefully this year, because one law makes changes to 27 laws on Ukraine and to 3 codes: tax code, budget code, and administrative code. I can tell you in 30 minutes all innovations there, but believe me, everything what we found is a difficulty, bureaucratic difficulty, that is existing for the moment in the way of attraction investments, privatization, public-private partnership also, and leasing of state property. We eliminated in this law. We took the best possible expertise from international countries, neighboring countries. We did it very, I would say, revolutionary. Then we polished it slightly before the enforcement agency will be reformed. We don't need this too much revolutionary because the biggest problem for us is also the courts and the enforcement agency. That when we are trying to push something to the privatization, the previous shadow owners are initiating this from various types of deals, etc. But President is supporting, Prime Minister is supporting, business is supporting. We have all chances to move it forward faster, because opportunity window is not endless, always. You have political cycles. I spend a lot of time talking to Balcerovich, Václav Havel, Fukuyama, Bendukidze, looking for the best way. And I know that there are cycles. Unfortunately, Fukuyama is saying education and time, and that's too long for me. So I want, like, Balcerovich reform, and then everything in the vehicle invented before us. We just have to implement the best possible cases, avoiding possible mistakes that have been done by some countries in the transition neighboring us. Actually, today I had the opportunity to meet with the organization that I'm also trying to model, which is existing in Lithuania, managing state-owned buildings, which are centralized management of the buildings, not the state-owned companies, because in Ukraine we also have this as a very decentralized. Different ministries are sitting in different buildings. Everybody is looking to increase, to move different cities. So this is the model of big data to make managerial decisions with the state-owned real estate is another program that we are going to implement. Sorry, not answered your question with regard to different clauses of the law, but it's revolutionary law.
Okay, so then just one additional one. Provided and when this reform will be passed through the parliament, do you have any assessment in terms of figures, how they will rise, how much money you can get from privatization after that reform will be passed?
In my previous life, I worked as the CEO of international investment company and then as a consultancy company in real estate. That's why I am not giving too much advice before I studied the documents. And of course, we can say, okay, the
Maybe
potential of
percentage.
privatization is 200 billion hryvnias. Is enough? Okay.
Sounds good.
Who measured and how? So we need a trend. We still have 3,000 state-owned enterprises. We have millions of square meters of state-owned real estate. What will be the price? Because first we have to build the process it's on the market. Political will plus process and the law. Then everything depends on the market situation. When we invested in Poland, Poland was not in NATO. But we invested with my English partners in Poland deliberately to be capitalized together with the country. So if you invest today in Ukraine and you buy everything on privatization and in 3-5 years Ukraine will be NATO, this is one price. If you enter the NATO area, it's another. So a lot. We still have big potential for investment in the privatization. Disregard that a lot of assets were given with some strange schemes in the previous years. That's why I believe that the state should be minimized. It should be very compact. It should be very professional. It should establish logical and clear rules, including taxation, motivating, demotivating, anti-monopoly committee, of course, justice. And this is a fair, service-oriented state. And you should give to the business as much as possible comfort as you want. But the state should be very clever, should have a vision, should have a strategy, how to Ukraine to be built in the global economic turnover, why we are needed to the world and what the world can give to us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. From the audience, do we have the questions? Yes, there is 2 questions. Ladies first. Yes. I will bring mine. It's faster.
Thank you very much. Dmytro, there's so many interesting trends right now in Ukraine, you know, with IT parks, data centers, warehouses, logistics facilities. The assets that you have, I mean, does your team look at it from that standpoint in terms of when marketing them to really market them in accordance with those secular trends and those areas that are really interesting both to investors already in the country and external investors?
It's not very good sound on the stage. As far as I understood, whether it's necessary to do the better marketing.
No,
No?
Can you hear me now? Maybe I'll keep it. Okay. There's so much interest.
It's a beautiful
I know. There's so
room,
much. Okay.
but the voice
Dmytro,
is coming from another side.
Okay, there's so much interest in logistics centers, warehouses, IT parks, industrial parks. The assets that you have, do you think of like matching those to those trends that are interesting to domestic and foreign investors?
Our job is to realize the assets that are assigned for the privatization by the government. There is, and we, of course, so what we are doing, we have changed the process and we are proposing to the market. There is also possibility, not many people know, but you should know, there is a possibility to initiate the privatization on one or another asset under the management of state-owned ministries and companies. So what we have in our investment menu, so we are proposing, we are trying not to overload the potential buyer, the investor, with post-privatization condition when it's not necessary. So we are saying this is the spirit brownfield. It was production of spirit. You can do what you want, what the business will allow. You may not do deliberately spirit production on this field, on the brownfield. I believe in the market. In some cases, we are saying, okay, some slight social conditions should be, not very hard. Yes, you can fire people, but pay them salary X months, not keep them forever. Or, for example, some specific cases, but in previous years, these post-privatization conditions were the special tool to get the special dedicated buyer. That these post-privatization conditions were written deliberately to find out the one specific buyer who has this specific expertise in this specific city for X specific years. That's why industrial parks and other developments of territories. Today, Mr. Lyubchenko said that he is thinking about his ideas of the points of growth. I think he will join today later, yeah? so I may not disclose too much. But one of the points of growth is that he believes in small and medium business, that you have to give them opportunity, kind of business park for SME, and the business will find the way what they do. Organic food or some small processing or of something, etc., etc. But what the state or the local communities should do, should give them easier connections to electricity, better deregulation and getting permits. So this is what the state, I believe, should do. If I answered your questions correctly. Thank you.
Excellent expose. Congratulations on that. I expect I produce voice, not noise. You put a rhetoric question, what business need? I would prolong. What business need? Government should feed, creating best conditions, creating best rules of game, and destroying barriers for business. We managed in Lithuania somehow to overcome privatization with many losings, many winnings, but anyway, we managed to do that. And as you formulated, in Lithuania we had as well the efficiency of privatization as the main task of the government. You know, but one thing we didn't realize, that efficiency is a ratio between results and costs. What government need always? The maximum result and minimum costs. Maximum result means endless. Minimum cost means zero. Mathematically, it means error. Politically, terror. And for government opinion, never would be furor. It's clear. That's why everybody should put question not to maximize and not to make the most efficient, but to find out optimal solutions. This is the way, the best way to find out a good solution. And it should be based definitely on balance sheet. But as science already told, balance sheet has two sides. One left side and right side. On left side, nothing right. On right side, nothing left. And again, three conditions if you would like to get results, three conditions, and all of them starting from I, implementation, implementation, and implementation. And from government side, there are three conditions as well. Firstly, government should not avoid responsibility for taking decisions. Secondly, government should be competent when giving the tasks for you. And thirdly, it should be good motivation. Otherwise, nobody would realize. And as earlier it was told, you know, that without enthusiasm, you shouldn't bring nothing. So thank you. Дякую.
Yes, thank you very much. I fully agree with you. We need optimal result, optimal. The government should be responsible and people should be motivated. Thank you very much.
Okay, very and short answer. I think we need to move forward and we should invite the Mr. Alexander Tkachenko, Minister of Culture and Information Policy in Ukraine. And Mr. Tkachenko will join us online, unfortunately online, or thanks God online, I don't know. And we would like that our colleagues would connect Mr. Tkachenko to our discussion. Okay, we already see you. Yeah, I don't know, where's the camera here? Are you here? Okay, yes, Mr. Tkachenko, I think the floor is yours. And maybe you could represent the thriving creative industries and tourism potential in Ukraine explained to our colleagues. And later on, of course, we will have the questions and answer session. Thank you very much for joining us.
Described when we're speaking about creative industries. Just to give a brief understanding, what does it mean in Ukrainian terms? It's above 117 billion hryvnias in economy, in GDP, or almost 4% of Ukraine's value added, and almost 4% of people who are working in creative industries employment. Mainly it's medium and micro-sized business. But in terms of multipliers, it's probably one of the most highest multipliers. If you invest 1 hryvnia in creative economy, you can get 2.2, and you easily can compare it with construction, finance, transportation, or other type of businesses. And we had a research, which is not present here, but Ukraine's part of creative economy, in Ukraine is one of the highest among European countries. Creative industries export 30% of total exports in Ukraine. During the time of COVID, we managed to take some strategic actions to help creative industries to survive and to reload. One of the things we did is passed a law with reduced VAT tax for creative industries. It's listed for theater performances, film premieres, film screenings, concerts, hotel accommodation, and so on. And granted for the first time in Ukraine history, around 638 million hryvnia of direct grant support of those who suffered during quarantine. We recently had research, 60% of those who were seeking for this support applied and received it. What we did recently this year, we created a sort of umbrella organization under the Cabinet of Ministers. So we raised the level of presentation of people from creative industries within the government. It's co-chaired by Mr. Fedorov and me, and provides direct dialogue between government and businesses, different coordination type, but what is the most important is that they create solutions and decisions which we can use in government and parliament. For example, now working groups are active in fashion, concentrated industry, art crafts, and already we finished a strategy for film industry. What we mean by creating this umbrella organization within the Cabinet of Ministers, it's access to finance and entrepreneurial skills and infrastructure, innovation, creative talent promotion. We use the resources that we do have within our agencies. We do have around 9 agencies, not only to promote, but also to develop entrepreneurial skills of these industries, which are quite not disorganized, but quite concentrated on themselves with their micro or small problems. One of the programs that we're going to develop this year and next year is creation of creative hubs, organizations or gatherings of creative people, not only in big cities, but also in small cities and medium-sized cities. And it is important that we already do have a model which combines hard component equipment and soft component training, mentoring, acceleration of programs, finding investment opportunities. Travel. Travel, of course, was also one of the most suffered industries during the meantime, but we managed to develop a program which we call Mandru Ukraine, Travel Ukraine, and which in fact increased the number of people who were traveling through Ukraine during last year. And it also boosted travel industry to turn back and start dialogue with government. Under the development, we have now a new law and new decisions which can promote traveling in Ukraine and within Ukraine. For the first time, we do have agency which have budgets for promotion and developing touristic routes. Part of this program is a huge program of large restoration. For the first time in Ukraine history, we're choosing 150 different types of historical and cultural heritage sites that should be restored during the next 3 years. In these terms, we are developing public-private partnership because it's not only about state financing. We're looking actively and changing the laws how to make it attractive for private investors to go within our program of restorations to invest in infrastructure, for example. Already under the restoration now, these days, are 22 concrete projects. And in the end of the year, some of them finally will be in better shape. But why it's important together with travel, because we combined restorations together with opportunities for travels, for changes, exhibitions inside, and we're working in coordination with our infrastructure ministry to be sure that travelers can get these sites because they do have roads. A large restoration for this year, in the budget we expect 2 billion hryvnia, in fact allocated at that moment 600, and process is ongoing. And what is important, we already do have 2 examples of private-public partnership in this area. We have within the ministry our agency, a touristic agency for the development of tourism. The main purpose is not only to have touristic routes, but also to develop, and in these terms we are working with our European consultants to create possibilities to change infrastructure for touristic routes. One of part of this infrastructure, we choose several what we call Ukraine's magnets. The most interesting potentially sites which are going to be changed not only with the infrastructure but with also subject what it is about. It's about Hortitsa Island in Zaporizhia, now under the restoration, Chernobyl zone where we created a special program for memorialization of the zone and touristic routes. It's also about Askania Nova and the Danube River. Part of boosting touristic industry will be, of course, the process which started this year. It's legalizing gambling business, which are allowed for 3 5-star hotels. We also started a new process, more transparent, of issuing stars for hotels, which are already in the process this year, and creating special possibilities and invitations for operators who are going to invest in hotels. But gambling, of course, whatever can help us with tourism too. I would like to mention and use the opportunity to say that we do have a special international forum, which with high participation of our European and American and other partners will take place this year on September 23-24 in Kyiv. It's the largest platform for discussion. It will be also, as now, UkraineInvest offline and online, which allow to build collaboration, networking, and to create new projects. But what is interesting, what we want to announce and what we're going to discuss with our European partners that we've seen, EU Green Deal and Eastern Partnership, people-to-people contacts initiatives, we're looking for collaboration with EU-funded sectoral project connecting EU and Ukraine by protecting and safeguarding culture heritage, promoting culture diversity, and enforcing regional tourism and development. We started a process of not only to create an environment, but also to protect additional funds, which we believe can be around 30 million for next 2-3 years. For our belief, culture, it's not only about spending money, it's about earning money. And if we speak about creative economy, it's definitely not only the future, but nowadays of existing life. Briefly, that's it.
Thank you very much. Maybe
if you
from
have
audience.
questions, I'm available.
Thank you. Maybe from audience will be some questions to Mr. Tkachenko.
Yeah, I'm here.
No, presentation was very complete, and I think by now, any questions?
Questions?
Maybe Sergey? Yes.
Minister, I have a question to you. COVID year proved to be unpredictable, specifically in terms of tourism, its activity, and specifically, well, in Ukraine. Could you give us some insight into development of internal tourism in Ukraine? Because we have a lot of business representatives today present. Whether they have new opportunities to develop tourist infrastructure in Ukraine, and also what about international tourism into Ukraine? How do you see recovery of that activity in post-COVID year? Thank you.
The decrease of incomes from last year in touristic industry in Ukraine was up to 50%. It's make a little bit easier at the end of last year, beginning of this year, when quarantine is not so strict. But our expectations together with the industry members saying that only at the end of 2023 we can return back to the size of the market which we had before COVID. But as soon as we have such challenge, because it's also an opportunity, it's a good time for us not only to change laws, which we are doing, but to create a special ways of how to special possibilities for investors, not only large one with huge hotels, but with a small one like glam hotels, to build infrastructure for the sites which Ukraine really do have, starting from Carpathian Mountains and with Black Sea coast. I personally traveled across all these routes. What is good to know for right now is that infrastructure like airports and roads are under construction, and in many places they are already present. What is not the best is the lack of hotel infrastructure, and that's why for us it's a challenge to create possibilities to invite, first of all, in special areas like southern part of Kherson Oblast, like Zakarpattia, like Bessarabia, and some other places in central Ukraine, investors to start creating possibilities for building hotel infrastructure. Because with culture heritage renovation and roads, we will do. But without hotels, flights we do have, roads we do have. But hotel infrastructure is the first topic, together with some additional things like translator of guides. For example, we now have started routes from Arab countries to Ukraine, and what we discovered is lack of guides who knows Arabic. So there are some issues which is not important, but what I want to emphasize, hotel infrastructure is the first target.
Thank you.
Minister, I have the question. It was a very nice figure, which I hear from you, 30% of exports from the intellectual properties. What do you mean behind these figures? Do you count the incoming tourism as well in this figure, or it's separate of incoming tourism?
Frankly speaking, the main part of this export are, of course, IT industry. It's around 65% of this figure.
It's a very good figure, very nice figures. Thank you.
Yeah, and we are ahead of part of GDP from such countries as Poland, Turkey, and some European countries, and only behind such monsters as UK in Europe.
Thank you. Last chances from audience. Do you have the question to the Minister of Culture Information Policy of Ukraine?
One more short question then. Minister, you are the co-chair of the Council and the Cabinet of the Ministers of Ukraine on Creative Industries. Thank you for creation of this institution, which is very important. Again, we have Lithuanian businessmen, businesswomen presented today in our audience. Which sectors of creative industries of Ukraine would you advise them to pay kind of first attention to? Maybe not only to Lithuanian, but to Baltic countries. And maybe you already have some cooperation with business from this region that are interested in development of creative industries in Ukraine.
I can name you by potential, by size of money which can gather some of these industries. Tourism and film industry are quite ahead of others. The same is about marketing, advertisement. But what we are trying to push ahead, which is not too much yet developed and is interesting for investors, it's of course design. And behind design lies everything we can produce to like clothes, furniture, and so on, because we do have good expertise here and good talent. It's crafts industries, and we believe that several other options. If I be in the business, I'm coming from business. I, first of all, whatever you smile or not, will invest in crafts industries, because we still do have a lot of masters, but they are not gathering together, and we are trying to combine them with designers, with artists, to promote their export potential.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think the session about the culture information policy are finished, and we are moving forward. Thanks once more, and hope to see you in reality.
And invest in creative industry. It's industry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, I would like to ask to connect Mr. Roman Opimach, Minerals of the Future, Strategic and Critical Raw Minerals, our next session, and Director General of the State Geologic and Subsoil Survey in Ukraine. Unfortunately, as well online. We are happy to see you. We see you well. Do you hear us?
Hello, Vilnius. I'm with us. Hear you well.
Great, great. The floor is yours, and maybe your presentation later on. We will have the answers and session, questions and answers session. Please.
Thank you so much. The presentation is ready, so I believe it will be loading right now. Shortly, I would like to describe what we are actually doing right now, where is the reform, how is going in upstream segment of Ukraine's economy, and also where is the key investment opportunities in exploration and production and industry of Ukraine. Next slide. So actually, the Ukrainian Geological Survey is the agency as the upstream regulator with issuing all kinds of licenses for various mineral resources exploration and development, and also carrying out different assessments in geological area. So our key priorities in our work, actually, one of them is to become client-oriented agency, the second one to modernize regulations, and the last one is, of course, attracting investment in Ukraine. Next slide, please. So when you are going to, when we are trying to become the client-oriented and open for license holders, for potential investors, there are actually 3 stages which everyone has to pass. So one of them is to get the information about the area, get the geological information. Currently, it's very easy. We just launched the single geological portal of Ukraine. This is a national website where you can find all information about the license holders, about the about the deposits, oil and gas, wells, artesians, wells, and another helpful information. So as well as about the gas infrastructure, as well as about the national parks, and information about the acreages, land plots. So it's facilitates the taking of decision of investors, as we believe. So next slide, please. After that, of course, when you take the positive, I believe, decision to come in Ukraine and invest in pretty complex area as exploration and production, you need to get license. So the way to get license is pretty easy. Everything is online. We are using the Prozora system, so it's pretty familiar all around the world. So everything is transparent and simple. So you can see that number of license which was obtained through electronic auction is growing rapidly, reaching 45% in 2020, and in this year it's already over 60% is sold through electronic auction. So it's a good progress. Next slide, please. And when you already have the license, so you are starting your operation. Of course, you need to contact. You need to contact the Ukrainian Geological Survey. You need to contact the another government agencies. You need to submit the applications, and for this purpose, we launched this year, this month, the options to submit the applications online. So not only to send in paper versions, hard version, but you can use internet to submit all the necessary documents and do not contact personally the agency, which is good progress. Next slide, please. So the second priority, as I mentioned, is modernization of the regulation in E&P industry. Next slide, please. So I'm trying to describe the main issues. So one of them that during the last half a year and a half, a bunch of the improvements were adopted by the parliament and by the government of Ukraine. So the system, right, currently the government is open to attract investors, especially foreign investors. There is no any barriers among them. Also, we are waiting that in upcoming months, the very important parliament initiative will be supported by the parliament, actually, and in the second reading, the bill will be adopted, and finally, the red tape will be cut, actually, and the regulation of permitting system will be even improved. Next slide, please. And eventually the final priority, this is the attraction of investors in upstream industry. Next slide, please. And for this reason, we launched 1 year ago the unique product. This is investment atlas, where you can find online the list of proposals in exploration and production industry. So you can find the teasers about the plots and then choose the proposals and nominate it on electronic auction. So the next important issue that we currently promoted, the potential of critical raw materials. And if you are going to following the QR code, you can find the presentation in details about the proposals. Among them are titanium, lithium, cobalt, nickel, and another critical raw materials. Ukraine right now are open. Ukraine are trying to find the investors for greenfield project, as well for brownfield project, as well the bunch of the license holders who are looking for partnership with the technical or capital investors. And finally, the last slide. So again, to support the investors, we open the geological reports virtual data room. So it's a bunch of the geological reports from the Soviet legacy geological information from the Soviet time, from Ukrainian time. There's a bunch of the books, graphic materials, which everyone can use for free and get it online. So this is the approach which Ukrainian Geological Survey inspired right now. So I mean the digital approach in our operations. And we believe, and we are actually invited investors in Ukraine, and especially in exploration and production area of Ukraine. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I think will be possibility to share these presentations to our colleagues. Please write emails because a lot of information inside, and that information about the geological electronic map, it's very important, you know, for the foreign investors to know the places, to know maybe the geological things, and of course to know more about the very important materials which Ukraine owns. Do we have the questions from audience? Looks not. And then let's say just a few questions, just one question from my side. In the former Soviet Union, we remember Ukraine as a really big producer for very not often fine materials, different metals and so on. What is the now situation if you will compare the past, which was, let's say, more than 30 years ago, and now existing situation? Do the quantity of these minings was explored? More of these minings you have now, or let's say some of them are already closed and you think in the future just to restart, to open them? Just in comparison, of course, you're a young minister, maybe you don't remember this 30 years, but I remember it was really very impressive, mostly all the Mendeleev table we have from Ukraine, you know, during our study in university and in school.
Thank you for your question. We still have such a list of the Mendeleev elements in Ukraine. Bunch of them, as you mentioned, and started to explore in Soviet Union, and they are still under exploration, actually, and developed. I am not sure about the quantity. Probably currently it is less than it was in the Soviet time because of the industry level of developments. But coming back to the investors, so there is still a lot of the proposals. So there's still a lot of open proposals which can be developed, and which will be ready actually to be developed by the investors.
Okay, thank you. Then nevertheless, one small question from me. How is the situation now regarding the export of some minerals and some metals? European Union and your Prime Minister just explained us it's very important to keep inside Europe the strategic materials, which you mentioned as a lithium and other things, especially for the battery industry, which is coming and which is generally gives possibility to be energy independent from fossil fuel and from third countries. The same is very important for Lithuania and Ukraine, I think. And the situation now, is it allowed to export to the third countries outside of European Union and Ukraine, these metals, materials, or there is some, let's say, restrictions on that, at that current situation?
Actually, there is no restrictions and any limits to export the production. Ukraine traditionally is a big exporter of iron ore, titanium, and now natural graphite. Also, next week, Ukraine is going to sign the memorandum of understanding in terms of the development of strategic and critical raw materials with the European Commission. We believe that it will facilitate the change of the information among European Union and Ukraine, and give start to different common projects. In terms of the lithium and development of another raw critical materials, development of another new projects. So Ukraine is waiting for investors. So we understand that it's difficult to explore it by ourselves. So we are ready to share this responsibility and share the risk, actually geological risk primarily, with the technical and strategic investors. We prefer that the bunch of these resources will be developed in Ukraine and will be reached in Ukraine, and the product will be produced use these materials. And from the side of the government and the parliament, Ukraine gives the different incentives to do that. So, for example, if you are going, probably Sergei mentioned this initiative, which was supported by the parliament, and if the investors will build the plane, or enrichment plane, not only produce mineral resources but also enrich it in Ukraine, so there is a right to get the incentive from the side of the government, fiscal incentives, regulatory incentives, and another issue. So that's what I mean. So I believe this is the right approach to support the investors, the new investors in Ukraine.
Thank you very much. By the way, in which region of Ukraine concentration of lithium is the biggest minings?
So currently it's Kryvyi Rih, so Kirovogradska region. So it's the center of Ukraine actually. One of there are two plots, two fields developed so far. One of the prospective area is also in the center of Ukraine, Zaporizhzhia region, and one of the plot is the east of Ukraine near the Donbas region.
Thank you very much.
Any questions from the audience? I have, again, one small and big at the same time. So EU, as other countries, other European countries as Ukraine, are moving towards green transition. And green transition requires access to critical minerals, to minerals of the future. Minerals that can be used for production of batteries and technologies. What kind of minerals of the future Ukraine has? What size of deposits, when they will be auctioned, how investors can see information about them? Maybe you can give us some more information about that.
Sure. So in this purpose, we elaborated the special atlas, which contains currently over 30 proposals, lithium proposals, titanium proposals, and it gives a general overview of the market as well. We're operated right now on the market, whereas the location of main spots of such critical raw materials, which auctions actually already taken place in Ukraine. What is the result of that auction, and the another plots which are open for auction. So I believe that the auction for the lithium will be supported by the government and will be loudly announced in the nearest future. All of the mentioned information, you can download it for free in Ukrainian as well as in English from our official website. So, and of course, I will send it to you and to organizer of the event.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very nice to see you, unfortunately online. We hope sooner or later we will see you in physical things and when the COVID will pass away. And if no more questions, then thank you very much once more. Till next our meetings.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Dear colleagues, we are coming closer to the final remarks, and maybe I will pass my word to my colleague Sergei. What do you think? What we should say to the audience and our online colleagues about this event, where we could need focus? I just want to remind that we will send all the presentations when we will receive inquiries from you, and Lithuanian Confederation of Industrialists will keep them. Doesn't matter when, next week is as well, and maybe some words from you.
Thank you very much. It was, as I said, a great pleasure and honor to be here today. What can I say? You know, typical words like Ukraine is open, Ukraine is waiting for investors. That's as always. What is new about Ukraine? Ukraine becoming more pragmatic. And you can see that those changes, also in terms of reforms, many of those happened for the first time in the history of modern Ukraine. That is very important. You can also see smaller things like our presentation materials, for example, on your table. I would encourage you to take them with you and to have a look at them. These are not just things about potential. Everything that is in this material, this is what can be implemented right away. So when you look at privatization, you will find only 3 targets, 3 privatization SOEs that will be auctioned this year. This is all pragmatic, analytical approach. This is about doing business Ukraine, because for us, example of good business governance and cooperation with investors is key. We want to promote Ukraine not with words, but with results. And you have seen that excellent promo video today. Thank you again to Lena and the team, Western NIS. You have seen all those figures. How many roads are being constructed in Ukraine? We didn't talk about this today. Maybe just for a second I will talk about big construction projects. It's the project under the auspices of the President of Ukraine. Big construction, it's about rebuilding roads, rebuilding schools, swimming pools, infrastructure, heritage of Ukraine. And I'm traveling throughout Ukraine often, and sometimes when I'm going somewhere between Poltava and Kharkiv, and I'm in the middle of Ukraine in the field, and I'm using that excellent road, European quality road, for me it's very hard to understand whether I'm in Ukraine, Lithuania or France, honestly. It's the same level. And it's a very good perspective for development of investment in Ukraine, because when we have stronger logistics, it's easier to do business. And it's easier to connect to logistic strategies. Also about logistic strategies, we have a new law as well. It has passed its first reading on multimodal transportation. Very important to use Ukraine as strategic logistical hub. So Ukraine is open in terms of pragmatic approach. This is new. Investors confirm that. So I encourage you to get in touch with government, to get in touch with us, to get in touch with our colleagues from Ukraine, from Lithuania, and let's do it together. Thank you.
As well, just a few sentences to add, Sergei. Thank you, Sergei. We really saw today the very ambitious young team which will do this reform, and from my view and from my point of understanding, these reforms, it's really Ukraine and new government, or I don't know how new is it, but it's really capable to do these changes. Looks that we are talking on the same language, more or less. We understand the problems, and of course these problems still exist. The changes for the bigger country takes time, and of course very important to keep judiciary reform and establishments of safe and stable climate for investments, and of course the fighting against corruptions. And we see the positive already results in the last 3-4 years. Personally, by me, I'm investing in Ukraine as well.
That's mean the positive changes are coming, and we hope it will continue, and Lithuanian business will support, Ukraine business will support the investment, support the Ukraine, and of course, we hope we will have the bright future together. I just would like to say thank you to all participants, online participants, and here who visit us there in Mrshans. And if no more questions, I would like to announce that the session is finished. Good luck to all of us, and hope to see you in the future.